Alright, hi, my name is Kristen. Today I'll be talking to you about minimum wage and its effect on the economy. So first I'd like to read you an excerpt from an article written by David Bergstein for the Huffington Post business section. So he said that a human body, be it alive, unhealthy, or dead, has the same volume of blood. The difference lies in circulation. We are healthy when our circulation is maximized, and our body begins to fail when our circulation is inhibited. The same is true for economies. All entities, individuals, companies, or countries, are healthy to the extent that they have circulation. For a country, money is the equivalent to the body's blood, and if the money is not flowing properly, the nation's economy suffers. So my main claim is that raising the federal minimum wage will have a negative impact on the economy. Raising the minimum wage will have this effect because it will increase employment, hurt the poor, cause inflation, and hurt small businesses. And all of these things are things that could be considered blood clots that inhibit the circulation of money in the economy. So I'd first like to start off with unemployment. Raising the minimum wage will increase unemployment because it will also increase the cost of labor. When businesses make a profit, they make a profit from consumers buying their goods, but they also have to pay their workers. However, if the cost of labor increases, then they need to balance out that profit, so they'll probably have to lay off people so that they don't lose money due to the increase of labor. In a study done by the Congressional Budget Office, they estimated that 500,000 people will lose their jobs if the minimum wage was raised to, say, $10.10, which was suggested by President Obama a while back. And increasing unemployment will also hurt entry-level workers like yourselves. Young people, when they start out in the workforce, they usually start out with a job that pays the minimum wage. And if companies are forced to lay off people due to a higher cost of labor, younger people will probably have less of a chance of attaining a job. And getting a job earlier in life usually helps the chances of employment in the future, and not working earlier is a detriment to that. It could hurt their chances of employment in the future. All right, and young people aren't the only ones living off the minimum wage. There are many adults who are, because young people, they also have their parents to help them, they all like to live, I guess. Young people aren't the only ones living off minimum wage. There are also many adults. I guess you would say the poor people of the world who are kind of forced to live off the minimum wage. Which brings me to my second point. Raising the minimum wage will actually hurt the poor. There's a common misconception that raising the minimum wage will help the poor to live a better lifestyle, have a better standard of living. But however, if the minimum wage is increased, then their chances of being laid off will increase, and it will thus decrease their income for their family. The living wage is actually $12.44, which is why people want to increase the minimum wage. However, a minimum wage job is technically, it's an entry-level job. It's something meant to start off with, and you're meant to increase your income with a second job. It's meant to help you start off, not to stay there in that minimum wage job. My third point is that raising the minimum wage will cause inflation. Like I said earlier, a higher cost of labor will cause a higher cost of goods, and companies will need to balance out their profits. They're gonna want to not only lay off workers, but also possibly raise the prices of their goods. This will also decrease the value of the dollar, because if people make more money and businesses raise the prices of their goods, people have to spend more money even if they make more. So it just comes full circle. And for my last point, raising the minimum wage will hurt small businesses. Usually, small businesses are important to the economy, and usually they would not be able to afford the higher cost of labor, causing them to lay off more workers. I'd like to, in conclusion, recap all my points. Raising the minimum wage will increase unemployment, hurt the poor, cause inflation, and hurt small businesses. These are all detriments to the economy, will not help it grow. And lastly, I'd like to conclude with one final statement. Raising the minimum wage just makes no sense. Okay, thank you. That was for you, Professor.
Makes no dollars and cents. That's the way you're supposed to say it. Then we get the joke. Okay. There you go. Got to work on that punchline. Gesundheit. All right, well, the subject is identified clearly. You've got an interesting quote to begin with. You've got a long analogy that you're drawing there, so I kind of appreciated that. When you got to the proposition, it's clearly stated. Although the secondary claims, when you laid them out on the first one, it sounded like you were going the opposite direction, that there would be increased employment. When you got to it in the body of the speech, it's clearer that you said unemployment, but I think if you listen back, you'll notice that you didn't say it quite clearly, and so it was a little bit confusing. But given the proposition that you said, I kind of was expecting that it was the opposite, and that's what it turned out to be. I didn't really get the argument in your preview about inflation. I got the small business one, so that was left out, but it shows up in the body of the speech, so it seems like there's an extra point that's presented there. The signposting in the body of the speech is pretty clear, so I think you're doing okay there. Lots of explanations and assertions, not much evidence in the argument. So you've got a lot of theory that you explain. You try to put things into context and give us some processes. All of that does help build you some credibility, I think. But the lack of grounds to support that, I think, is problematic. There are only 2 or 3 pieces of data in the presentation that you cite that are, that we could say, well, this is something that supports the claims that you're making. One is the CBO study that estimates what the number of jobs would be lost if we went to the minimum wage increase, and the other is what the living wage is. Outside of that, everything else seems to be largely an assertion on your part. I thought it was a little bit strange because your number 2 point basically seems to be repeating the first point. The first point says unemployment is going to increase, and the second point says it's going to hurt poverty because people are going to be out of a job. So I'm not sure that that's really a second point. It might be an explanation of the first point and its impact, but I'm not sure that it really constitutes a second point. On the inflation issue, there's, again, like I said, a lot of explanation and assertion, but not any data that demonstrates that this is true. We don't have any statistical models that show this. We don't have any economists that make this claim. We just have your theory about it. And then the same thing about hurting small business. Well, what percentage of the minimum wage is paid by small business owners? You suggest it's a lot, but I don't see any information that suggests that that's the case. And these small businesses, they can't afford it. Where's your information that says that? That's the kind of thing that's missing in the argument. So I think you explain the theory pretty well. It's organized nicely. You deliver it reasonably well, but there's a lot of grounds missing in the argument, and you need a lot more data. All right, thank you.